Okay, picture this. A presidential candidate kind of stumbles on screen. Panic ripples through the room at the watch party. Then someone knocks on the door. It's that sort of, dark humor that only really comes out when the stakes are incredibly high.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today, isn't it? Those really intense undercurrents of the 2024 election, the doubts, the big strategic shifts happening behind the scenes in both the Biden and Trump camps.
Yeah, based on some really detailed reporting and analysis. And, part of our inspiration for digging into this comes from seeing how channels like Mindful Moments on YouTube use AI to analyze books and events. It really encourages you to step back, reflect, think critically.
It does. And what really jumps out right away is that gap, between the public face campaigns put on and the raw anxiety just underneath.
Like the concerns about Biden's sharpness.
Right. Take Eric Swalwell, that White House picnic, June 2023. The president doesn't recognize him right away, needs prompting. I mean, that wasn't just some awkward moment. It kind of became a symbol for these bigger worries about his fitness.
And you hear how that worry just spread like wildfire, almost. You imagine being at that debate watch party? The air thick. And then Ruben Gallego cracks that joke.
Yeah, the dark humor thing. Joking with Swalwell, who Trump often targets, about ICE maybe coming for him because Biden seemed off. I mean, it says a lot, doesn't it? About how worried people actually were.
Definitely. And then you've got Senator Chris Coons at a different party, phone blowing up, texts from other senators just flying in. Disaster. Terrible. What the hell is going on? It paints a really vivid picture of, serious alarm.
And these weren't just one-offs, were they? There was that clip of Biden seeming to wander off during the MSNBC interview, his reliance on those big print notes.
Right.
Even, that anecdote about an aide mentioning him looking confused sometimes after getting out of the limo. Little things, maybe, but they fed into this narrative.
Even if the campaign was pushing back, saying he was sharp privately.
Exactly. Regardless of what aides portrayed behind closed doors, these public moments were adding up. And then you had those episodes right before the debate. Freezing at the Juneteenth concert, looking, tired and maybe unfocused at the G7. You hear his team was anxious about him just staying on track.
It makes you wonder about the internal campaign stuff.
Yeah.
Even with all this anxiety floating around, there was this sense of, inevitability maybe. Mike Donilon's reported comment, nobody walks away from this, talking about running again.
Yeah, that points to the sheer power, the gravity of the presidency itself, doesn't it? The perks, the position.
It's hard to just walk away.
Which makes those internal debates, like whether to even hold a debate with Trump, so interesting. Some advisors apparently thought, look, Trump's legal issues are sucking up all the oxygen. Why risk shifting focus back to Biden's potential weaknesses?
Makes sense. But then you contrast that with the Trump camp. Susie Wiles, totally different energy. Just laser-focused, confident, getting Trump's orders done.
Complete contrast. And then, boom, the June debate happens. And the aftermath sounds like, a dam breaking.
Yeah, reports of major donors, campaign aides, literally making pleas for him to get out of the race. Can you imagine the vibe at Campaign HQ described as just gloomy?
Utterly gloomy. And even Donilon, trying to spin it, acknowledging maybe some age-related stuff, it didn't seem to cut it, did it? It didn't really address what people felt they'd seen.
No. And it really throws into sharp relief how the two campaigns handled pressure,
Totally. While the Biden team's dealing with all this internal angst and external panic, the Trump campaign just doubles down. Grievance narrative, weaponized government.
Right, turning the indictments into a rallying cry.
Exactly. Framing him as the victim, fighting the system. And that played really well with his base. It became part of his story.
And the Biden campaign's problems weren't just the debate itself.
Yeah.
That meeting later, between Jen O'Malley Dillon, the campaign manager, and these upset donors, apparently it really backfired.
Yeah. The reporting suggests her maybe being a bit dismissive just made things worse. Amplified their worries.
Meanwhile, you've got senior Democrats, people like Jim Clyburn, Hakeem Jeffries, having these very serious private conversations, expressing real doubts.
Even donors were acting. David Orzag, who'd supported Biden, reportedly just stopped fundraising for him after seeing that debate performance.
Wow. That's significant.
It had real consequences. Fundraising events getting canceled, reports of a cash crunch starting to bite post-debate. It was tangible.
And then Nancy Pelosi, her interview with Jen Psaki on MSNBC, that felt very strategic.
Oh, absolutely. Carefully planting seeds of doubt about Biden's viability, but without, throwing him under the bus right now, as she put it. It's classic political maneuvering.
And Jamie Raskin publicly confirming these very honest and serious and rigorous conversations happening inside the party. It just shows how deep the unease went.
Yeah, it wasn't just whispers. And then you hear reports about Barack Obama privately thinking Biden wasn't the strongest choice, maybe preferring an open nomination, possibly looking at someone like Gretchen Whitmer.
Which leads to Whitmer and Kamala Harris actually talking directly amid all this speculation.
Right. You can imagine the tension there, maybe echoes of the 2020 VP selection process lingering. Plus, that whole dynamic between Biden and Obama, with their history and past disagreements on electability, it adds another layer of complexity.
So looking at all that internal Democratic, turmoil, what really stands out to you?
I think it's seeing how different people reacted. Some clearly felt, okay, we need a change. Others were like, no, stick with the incumbent loyalty, power of the office.
Yeah, different calculations.
And even inside Biden's immediate circle, the first reaction to the debate wasn't, oh no, he's unwell. It was reportedly, he was overprepared.
Interesting. So blaming the prep, not the person.
Sort of, which suggests maybe a bit of denial. Or at least a hope that, like before, the criticism would just fade away if they ignored it or explained it away.
But it didn't fade this time. Tim Ryan writing that op-ed, basically sketching out a Harris-led ticket without Biden. That felt like a big public crack.
It was significant. And knowing Pelosi privately felt he should step aside, even if she was being cautious publicly, that tells you how serious it got at the very top.
And the campaign itself just went quiet for days after the debate, didn't it? Calendars cleared, radio silence.
Yeah, it hints at a campaign really in crisis mode, trying to figure out what to do next. Hunter Biden reportedly even joining strategy sessions.
Which brings us to those competing strategies inside the team. O'Malley Dillon and Anita Dunn apparently wanting Biden out there more to show strength.
Right, push back against the narrative. But then Donilon and Steve Ricchetti leaning towards maybe lying low, ignoring the critics.
And Biden himself apparently not keen on lots of performative appearances.
Which just adds to the difficulty. And you hear O'Malley Dillon eventually got to a point of, real uncertainty, reportedly telling senior staff on a Zoom call, look, there's a real chance he might not finish this race.
Wow. That's a heavy admission.
It really is.
Okay, but let's try and balance this. Because amidst all that Democratic anxiety, there were other ways to look at things, maybe more positive framings.
Sure, you could definitely spin some things differently, like Harris's selection as VP in the first place. You can see that as Biden prioritizing loyalty, party unity, maybe looking past their primary debate fight for the bigger picture.
That's fair. And maybe her being quiet during that disastrous debate watch party. Maybe that wasn't just being stunned, but like strategic awareness, staying insulated.
Possibly. A calculated move in a crisis moment. It's hard to know for sure, but it's a plausible read.
Exactly. And then you contrast all the Democratic hand-wringing with the Trump campaign's approach.
Right. While Democrats are debating viability, Team Trump is just relentlessly pushing this comeback story, turning his legal fights into fuel, rallying the base against perceived persecution.
And some aides apparently even saw the indictments as weirdly helpful.
Paradoxically, yeah. Because it dominated the news, maybe distracting from other potentially less helpful things Trump might say or do on the trail, kept the focus on his fight.
And their messaging discipline after the debate was striking, immediately pushing out talking points, framing Trump's performance as flawless.
Total confidence, or at least the projection of it. And Trump himself, he just gets the power of an improbable comeback story, doesn't he? It's central to his brand.
Yeah. We also saw that brief moment of unity from labor leaders, though that seemed to fray later with leaks about their own concerns about Biden.
True. And Biden did try to address the age thing head on sometimes, I don't walk as easy as I used to. But those lines, while maybe relatable, didn't quite seem to counter the core anxieties people were expressing after the debate.
Still, you have to acknowledge the resilience inside the Biden campaign, too. O'Malley Dillon's message to her team, reportedly, was basically, keep your heads down, focus, get him to the finish line despite everything.
That determination is key in politics. And looking bigger picture, remember, despite all the Democratic drama we've talked about, the GOP largely unified after their convention. They projected confidence.
Right. Even got that supportive message from Phil Murphy, the Democratic governor of New Jersey, to Trump after the shooting incident, acknowledging his strong position.
Yeah, interesting cross currents there. And you saw figures like Adam Schiff privately expressing doubts maybe, but being very cautious publicly. That pressure for party unity is immense.
Absolutely. And Harris, after the debate, making calls, shoring up support for Biden, public loyalty was crucial then.
It really was. This whole period, it just makes you appreciate the complexity. It reminds me, actually, of the kind of critical thinking encouraged by platforms like Mindful Moments and stuff we've talked about before. You really need to pause and look beyond the surface narratives, especially in these high-pressure moments.
Yeah, you really do. So when we wrap this up, what are the big takeaways?
It really hammers home the intense pressures, the internal conflicts, the constant strategic calculations that go on inside these campaigns, even with an incumbent president, and just how much these moments of doubt, the human factors, can really sway things. It's not always just about policy.
And for you listening, it really highlights just how complex election information is, why that critical thinking is so vital. You can't just take things at face value. Campaigns that look solid might be dealing with huge internal struggles.
Totally. And maybe a final thought to chew on. What's the lasting effect of moments like these? When doubts run so high, when strategies have to shift on a dime, what does it tell us about leadership itself? About how fragile political power can feel sometimes, and how unpredictable history can be?
Really powerful questions. Look, if you found this conversation valuable, we'd love it if you'd subscribe for more analyses like this. Share it with friends, anyone who appreciates getting deeper into these events.
Yeah, and check out any links we provide for more resources.
And most importantly, just keep thinking critically about the information that comes your way every single day. Thanks for joining us.